Hey buds, Smiley here. Let's talk about secondary actions. So secondary actions are 2 AP, a third of the action economy that you're going to get every turn, but it counts for quite a bit of different actions. So we'll just dive right into it. So to start, gadget attacks are going to be 2 AP. So anything that qualifies as a gadget in your equipment, if you're making an attack with it, or something to make the gadget make an effect against someone, that's going to be considered a gadget attack. Using a concoction the same way. So if you're trying to heal yourself, if you're trying to buff or debuff yourself or an enemy, you can use a concoction for 2 AP. Those are all listed as well in the equipment section, which we'll have a longer video on to kind of detail that. But any concoction use is going to be 2 AP. The same with an unarmed attack. So even if you have any buffs that would make your unarmed attacks do more damage, you still only cost 2 AP, which is nice. It's good to have. So it's you can actually get a lot more attacks in than you would if you used a say weapon attack. So there's a lot of really good unarmed builds that are pretty much just based around beating up enemies with your fists. So definitely a good thing to do. I will say, I also mentioned when successful, it does 1d4 blunt damage normally, and you can also cleave with it, which is nice. You can, if you take a target down, any remaining damage can be applied to another target in the same zone, but there are plenty of ox powers and innate abilities and stuff that can jack up that unarmed attack. So definitely a good thing to have. Disarm action sounds exactly like what it is. You can disarm a target using your body or an object. So it would be a contested muscle finesse combined talent check. So again, roll a d20 and add your muscle and your finesse modifier, and you will make them drop their primary weapon, and they'll be under the disarmed condition, which is always good. Same thing with a ranged disarm. It's very similar, except you're using a projectile or ranged weapon to do it. So it's a little bit of a different check. This would be analysis finesse rather than muscle finesse. Again, combined, you roll a d20 plus and add those modifiers, and it is contested, so they'll be rolling the same thing. So, but otherwise, basically the same. Just make someone drop whatever they're holding. An escape action, you can use 2 AP to escape an enemy's reach without imposing a sucker punch. So if you were to move and an enemy still has, like if you were to move out of a zone that an enemy is in and they still have AP, they can do a sucker punch on you. Basically get a free hit in between turns. So good thing to keep in mind what a kind of AP and action economy your enemies still have. But if you wanted to be sure that you wouldn't catch a sucker punch, you can use 2 AP to get out of that zone safely. So it costs a little bit more than just moving into out of a zone like normal, but definitely worth doing if you're low on HP and you got to make a quick escape. The evade action is slept on a lot. It is a very powerful action to take. But basically, any attack roll against you until the beginning of your next turn is reduced by 1d4. That's any attack roll. So it continues to keep being in effect. So you roll a new d4 every time. Critical hits are still going to be a thing, though, even if it does reduce it below the DT, which can be kind of, it happens every once in a while. It doesn't happen very often. Most of the time, critical hits do exceed DTs, but that's something to keep in mind as well. Otherwise, evade is a very, very strong, good thing to have. Hide action. You can spend 2 AP on your turn to attempt to hide from the enemy. So that would basically apply the hidden condition, which is similar to stealth, but basically, where are you, buddy? Aha! Hidden being has advantage on any attacks, and it may surprise a target. So if you're doing a stealth build, or maybe you're got kind of a low HP or something, it might be worth it to look into that as a build for your character, basically constantly hiding to get that advantage and get those really high value sneak attacks afterwards. Otherwise, we have trip and push attacks as well, so you can slow an enemy down by tripping them, pushing them. Again, usually opposed talent checks for this sort of thing. This would be a muscle versus a resilience or finesse, so be sure to keep in mind the kind of checks that we're going to be making for this sort of thing when we use it. Otherwise, you can impose the knockdown condition on an enemy if you push them and trip them down, which is good. It means you have to spend some AP to stand up, and any attacks against them are going to be a little bit stronger. Improvised weapon attack, basically, and then using a weapon or using an item around you, something around you that is not decidedly a weapon that you don't necessarily have expertise in. So using a street sign that's been knocked over, or like throwing a vase at somebody, that would be an improvised weapon, right? So they can be a little bit less likely to hit because you're not going to be adding modifiers or bonuses or anything unless you've taken innate abilities or oct powers for that. But there's quite a bit that goes into it. So you're going to be doing a little bit of muscle and finesse scores to find out how far you throw it and to get the distance and everything. So definitely read up on that if you're the kind of person who likes to get creative with their environment and their surroundings in a combat scenario. Lastly, you can take cover, which is a little bit different from hide. You actually do get the cover condition for that if you use 2 AP. So taking cover behind a medium-sized object gives you half or full cover. Basically makes it really hard for people to hit you with ranged attacks. So a pretty good thing to have if you're fighting a bunch of ranged enemies. So definitely worth considering as well. And also a little tip from Bud there, taking cover can also be a countermeasure for 2 AP. So keep that in mind. It's one of the unique abilities that's not only a secondary, since it's something you do on your turn that would be a secondary, it's also a countermeasure, so you can do it on someone else's turn or in between rounds, or turns, excuse me. And I think that's going to do it for our secondary actions there. The other actions that we have to talk about are going to be countermeasures and other actions, quote unquote. So we'll look forward to that in another video. But in the meantime, stay tuned. We'll see you next time.